this world of wonder. Circle where we all belong. Voice of 1,000 tribes. Tunza. Circle where we all belong.
Where we all belong.
Pulse of the human heart. Tunza. Circle where we all belong.
Where we all belong.
Circle where we all are free. Circle where we all belong.
Where we all belong. Where we all belong. Where we all belong.
Welcome to Lesbians Who Lunch. We are in the beautiful home of Chris Lenz and Linda Rogers, and I want to thank you so much for letting us be here today and for doing all the cooking and all the wonderful preparation of the food. And I'd like to know, Linda, what is it that's on the menu? It looks incredibly colorful.
It is colorful. It's called cracker caviar, and it's called cracker caviar because you eat it with soda crackers. No other reason.
Glad you explained.
It's got shrimp and just a lot of other delicious things: mango, avocado, cilantro, scallions, and
It looks great.
it is great. And you said you're going to try it.
I am
so
gonna
you
try
go ahead and
some.
tell me what you think.
Okay.
It's a risk I
Oh wow!
do not desire to take.
Oh, I am so happy. More happy than I could ever have said.
See why you didn't do that.
It's wonderful.
It's good. Delicious. So is the wine.
A French rosé,
Thank you, Nadine.
as if I know.
Yes, well, Linda told us, so I know we know. I want to start with just talking about how perceptions of homosexuality and attitudes towards that have changed over time. And so I thought I'd start with a story about myself in the 1950s when I was 13 years old and I was in school and we were to write a little term paper. And I did mine on homosexuality, and it was at the time that Time magazine came out saying, which in the 50s was a big step forward, homosexuality is a mental illness. So I wrote this very knowledgeable paper about that, ending with, and so we should feel sorry for them. God forbid. So I'd like to have you share your thoughts and your experiences about how you think attitudes, understanding people's knowledge of homosexuality have changed, either from your personal experiences or your political work. And who would like to start?
I think I can say that growing up in Florida in the 60s and 70s, there was a great deal of political activism going on in the country around the war, but nothing about homosexuality. And it was still something that you could get in a lot of trouble for when I went to the University of South Florida. The one thing I knew you could be expelled for was being an open homosexual. You didn't have to be caught conducting oneself, just calling oneself a homosexual was grounds for expulsion. So I left the state as soon as I possibly could when I graduated and thought there must be other places in the country that are more adaptable and acceptable. And there were. But coming back now after 25 years of being away, it seems to me that Florida has made some strident moves forward in acceptance that's mirrored across the country, actually.
Do you agree with that, Carmen? Have you seen that in your experience?
I've been in the area for about 26 years. I moved up from Miami, originally from Northern Virginia. And my experience is that as of late, there has been a lot more acceptance. And I've seen it, for the most part, in the media, not so much on television, certainly some in the movies, but certainly in print media. I know the St. Petersburg Times has done varied articles about couples. I just saw one in the paper yesterday. A male couple sitting on the couch holding hands and talking about the remodel that they did and their other gay brothers that this particular gentleman had. And I was just so elated to be able to see that and go, look at this and how accepting. And I thought there are probably some people that are pretty uncomfortable with this, but it seems like they're sort of pushing the issue a little bit more and trying to gain some more acceptance. So I think the fact that the print media is certainly standing out and exposing us as just normal everyday people and not saying, You know, you can't sit on the couch like that because we can't shoot your photo like that. I mean, this guy took that picture and they printed it, you know, a good-sized picture, and in the Sunday paper. And I thought,
Yeah.
this is really a big stride forward, I thought. So I have seen some changes, and they're positive ones.
Even I was struck with that, and you
Mhm.
know, and I know there have been changes, but I still thought that was a wonderful photo. Chris, have you noticed?
Well, I didn't come out until later in my life, so it's a relatively new position for me to be in.
When did you come out?
Only about 9 years ago. I was 38. So I feel like I've seen changes just in that time politically. This administration, of course, is not really helpful, but it feels to me like there's an not underground, but an undercurrent movement that is ignoring what the administration says, and I feel like people in their 20s and 30s are not even concerned about it as an issue, and completely accepting, but my family was not initially, and some of my friends were not initially. So it's still, I think, something people want to think is not connected to them. That it's okay if other people do it, but not my family, you know.
Because it means something about me as a parent?
As a parent, maybe, or how will other people think of me as a parent, as an adult who has this child who's, you know. I think that was still an issue for my mother and father, definitely. But that's a different generation. I do feel like there's a shift, and it's happening with the younger people.
I'd like to come back to that about coming out with your parents and your family if we could. But first I wanted to know what you've seen in your work and
Well,
personally.
it's interesting because I don't think that there's one line that tracks progress forward. I think there's multiple lines. There's political, there's cultural, there's economic. And there are times when we're experiencing a terrible political backlash and seeing tremendous advances in the media. You know, you see Will and Grace and Queer Eye for the Straight Guy and gay and lesbian characters introduced on, you know, mainstream television programs. But on, you know, November 2004, we watched 11 states build into their constitution specifically anti-gay
How many?
legislation. 11.
11.
And since then there have been additional ones. And Florida now faces the prospect of 2006 having our own anti-gay marriage amendment built into the Constitution. So it becomes difficult to say how are things, because in some ways, for example, hate crimes in Florida have increased 33% for 2 reporting cycles against gay people in the most violent categories. And yet, we are also, you know, there are many places where we see advances. More than 10 million Floridians live in municipalities where there's an a anti-discrimination ordinance that includes the gay and lesbian community, and there's more and more that include gender identity and expression, so that people who don't conform to gender stereotypes are protected as well. So I think it becomes difficult to track all of it and say, yes, we're making progress on every level and at the same rate. There are some places we are in the midst of a backlash, but backlashes happen when we make progress. So
That's exactly right. I think as you take the risk to go into a new area and to break down barriers, that's when the flare-up comes. But overall, there seems to be a trend towards more and more acceptance. I was reading The Cultural War, the myth of polarized America, and in it, Morris Fiorina, who is apparently a political scientist at Stanford University, was quoting from national election surveys, and he said, which asked, how do you feel about certain things, and rating from a 0 meaning very cold to 100 to total acceptance, with 50 being a neutral point. And he saw, and what it shows is that in the 1970s, 33% of Americans were on a 0 when it came to homosexuality, absolutely, totally turned off and cold. But in the year 2000, it was just 3 or 4 degrees less than neutral, where at the same time, the category that is seen as the greatest protagonists of homosexuality, the fundamentalists, were only being rated 4 degrees warm. So they were far closer in the general acceptance than you would think, and it has come a long way. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, the hot point for the political agenda in this country is that you have to have a minority that's acceptable to hate. You have to, that's what's happened with the conservative right. And right now, the one national minority that you can hate without any consequence legally are queers. Gays and lesbians are open game. And so it becomes a great target. And when you wrap sexual preference up with morality, which is what's happened here, and then you take that and you say there's a political bent. Not only are you homosexual, which is against God's law, but if you're homosexual, you have to be a liberal as well. There's no way there are any conservatives
Well,
out
if only
there.
it were true.
If only it were true. But this has become this portrait now. We have this composite of the homosexual in America. And it's a great poster boy for the ultra-conservative right. So I look at that and say, great, that's fabulous, because some publicity is better than no publicity. And coming from the wallpaper generation, where what you were supposed to do was stand in the corner at family reunions, stand at the corner, in the corner when you went to your work parties, and pretend as if you were in complete and total awe that all these straight people were having such a great life. It's great to see moving forward and knowing that the controversy, if that's going to create backlash, bring it on. The civil rights movement in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and continues now understands completely that without that controversy, there is no movement forward. So I welcome it. It's much better than where that's silence that we stayed among.
Yeah, that dark secret.
The dark secret.
But your journey is really emblematic of how the movement shifted. I mean, for a lot of time, it was, let me get out of this small, confining, constricting, bigoted town into a place where I would be more accepted. So you have large concentrations in major cities and a focus on making change nationally, following the civil rights model. Now you have very much people either staying where they grew up or returning to where they grew up and insisting on being respected in their hometowns, small and large. And it has changed the movement dramatically because
Powerful demonstration.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's much more personal. I can be an anonymous, person in a big city, or I can be in the town where I grew up, where I know the mayor and I know the city council and my family, and this is the church I grew up in, all of those things. And those people can't dehumanize me. They can't pretend they don't know who I am, and that is the biggest, antidote.
They
to
know
the
your humanness.
stereotypes. Absolutely.
So reclaiming your home. And you just brought up another point that I remember reading about the research that shows that when people know a gay or lesbian, that their acceptance levels go up. It's the unknown and all the hype about that.
Well, it's absolutely easy to dehumanize somebody that is
Right.
theoretical to you.
Don't know.
Right.
There is a caveat to that. I mean, it used to simply be come out, come out, come out, and just by being out, you will transform the people around you. We did focus groups right before the November elections, well, in preparation for the November elections, and it was interesting because we did focus groups with people who identified as friends and family. So, they were screened as saying, I have friends or I have family who are gay, lesbian. And so in these focus groups, I was shocked to hear how much they weren't with us on the issues. And what it came down to was they didn't believe us when we said it was legal in most counties in Florida to fire somebody who was gay, that there was no state law that banned it, or that adoption, Florida is the only state with a statutory ban on qualified gay people being able to adopt. And they said, well, that's not true. And it's not true because I work with a gay person, they haven't been fired. Or there's a lesbian couple down the street that they've just adopted twins and, the law didn't stop them from doing that. The people in that room who were passionate about supporting equal rights for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community had this in common. The gay people in their lives had told them the truth about their lives and had asked them to help. That was the difference. And so you have so we also did focus groups with gay people. And we said, do you tell your straight friends and family what goes on in your life? And they said, no. We don't tell them because if they should already know what we deal with. And if they don't, if they cared about us, they'd ask. So you had this weird don't ask, don't tell policy going on that had kept us apart from the people most likely to come to our aid.
Yeah.
At least we know where Clinton got it.
Yeah. That's an interesting policy. I guess right after 1999, they had as many people discharged, as many homosexuals discharged as previously after, and his came out 10 years ago. And now there's like 80 representatives in the House that are drafting a bill for Congress that is saying that the policy needs to be blind to sexual orientation when it comes to military. Did you know that?
Mhm.
That's, I knew you knew that.
Oh, okay.
You're in the political
supposed to know
arena,
that.
yeah.
Well,
But
when you can't get straight people to join the military, I guess you have to, and you don't want to reinstitute the draft.
that's true.
I guess you have to open some doors.
Yeah, because that's another point. The actual ousting of the homosexuals went down after 2001
Yes.
because they needed everybody. And so.
Yes, the sexual orientation of cannon fodder is irrelevant to them.
Yes, right. But I thought from the beginning that I was so angry when that passed because it just took the edge off what I thought could have been a really strong movement to do what is right to do and what was done when Harry Truman was president and blacks, that Americans were, allowed into the military and given rank and it just has made a tremendous difference. And so I was disappointed that President Clinton took that way, and I'm glad to hear it's going to be changed. You were talking about friends and family not being aware of when you need help. I don't know that that's different from others, who don't tell friends and family when they need help for different things. Can you tell me a little bit, like, just to use myself as an example, having been married for 15 years and going through, deciding to get a divorce, nobody in my family knew that I was ever in crises or ever needed help or was unhappy or any of those things. So how is that different from what generally goes on with people who have this be strong attitude?
Right. Well, I think that they're related. I think there's sort of a general, we protect our families from tough things in our lives, but also added to it, is a fear of living out the expectation. You will be sad. Life will be harder for you. These are the things that even the most supportive parents say. I worry about you because life's going to be so hard for you now, and so there's a desire to protect them from that. But also, so many of these stories are humiliating stories. Of losing a job or being denied membership at the Y, or whatever it is. I mean, there are these little humiliating, dehumanizing insults, and it's hard to say to your neighbor, to your coworker, I was walking down the street with my partner, and there was a group of teenage boys, and I had to let go of her hand because I was afraid of what would happen.
Right.
It's not the easiest conversation to bring up, but it's the essential one, and it's the one that's going to transform things. So I'll tell you, when we look at polling, it's not so much that the majority of Americans or even the majority of Floridians are against us. It's just that the ones who are deeply passionate about it, and the ones who are with us will get around to it. It's just not very high on the list of priorities. They don't, and I think it's because they don't understand their role. They think, I don't have a problem with gay people. I've done my part, rather than, I need to be standing up with my sister, my brother, my neighbors. I need to actively do something. And it's time now for straight people who are pro-equality to come out of the closet with that support.
I agree. My being unhappy in a marriage is not the same thing as institutionalized devaluation of a human being. And that is the issue that has to be really addressed.
Well, there's a lot of support, known support for people going through divorces and changes in their lives like that. And I think there's still a deep underlying homophobia when it involves gay and lesbian people that people don't realize they have until they run smack into it. The lack of belief that there's not the protection in our jobs, not the protection as we walk through the community. I don't think until you're in those shoes that you see and feel what's aimed at you sometimes. I mean, I know from my own personal experience from being straight the majority of my life and living a life that was acceptable to one that all of a sudden got me a lot of attention that was not positive. So.
And I'll tell you that I also believe that what we do with our families is we don't share the joy either. We're not sharing the good times because we don't want to make our families uncomfortable. And so there's this silence that we assume is a position in the lives of our families. My mother asked me, "Well, how's Chris?" "She's great, she's fine." These are our comments, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I know with my straight sisters and brothers, there's an intimacy in their conversations and a comfort zone that I don't have, not about my relationship. And you have to exercise it like a muscle. You have to be willing to go through the pain to build
The funny looks.
the funny looks and the the rolling of the eyes and the do we have to talk about that while we're at the table, to get to the point where normalcy feels normal for your family.
I have just learned that I have seriously neglected two of our guests at the table, so I would like to introduce Nadine Smith on my left. Hi, Nadine.
Hi. Always on your
And
left.
Carmen Smythe. Thanks for being here
You're
and
welcome.
for chatting.
It's a pleasure.
I just want to come back to what you said earlier about your parents and other parents are probably my age or older. And the good news, first of all, is that we're dying off. And we're the ones with that. We're the ones with the lower rate of acceptance. I think in the book, The Myth of the Cultural War, Morris pointed out. Morris, I can call him.
Why not?
No, quite well. That 55% of people my age are accepting of homosexuality, whereas when you get down to 19 to 29-year-olds, it goes up to about, you probably know this better than I, 75 or 80%.
Oh, yeah, depending on what the issue is.
Yeah. So the good news is that there is a shift, and it's age-related in attitude. I do want to bring the topic around to the Earth Charter because, first of all, the show is about the Earth Charter, but also it's a document on all of life and nourishing, accepting, supporting all life on the planet. And what absolutely delighted me was, and I know this was a dialogue that went on for quite a while, there is a statement in the Earth Charter, one of the principles, on eliminate all discrimination, and it includes in that sexual orientation. It's the first international document that I'm aware of that says eliminate discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation. And this was discussed by Earth Charter commissioners all around the world after the people had given their input to it. And I remember Stephen Rockefeller, who was chairing the International Drafting Committee, received an email from one of my Earth Charter volunteers in Tampa who has a lesbian foster daughter. And she said, I love the Earth Charter, I'll be involved, I'll do whatever I can, but I'll love it even more if they would put in there or take out any category and just say eliminate all discrimination. This was while it was going through the drafting process. She got an email back from Stephen saying that this issue was being discussed by the Earth Charter commissioners, and when it came out, it had that now I know that Sue, with all her love, did not make that happen alone, but there was a very deep dialogue around inserting that in there. So I'm just delighted that it's there. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was how you think, but before I do that, let me just ask Carmen. I just want Carmen to speak because you've been a little quiet, but you're also our Earth Charter volunteer at the table. Carmen's been involved for a while with the Earth Charter here in Tampa, Florida, and I just want you to tell us what you've been doing, what kinds of things you've been doing with it.
Well, at the moment, we're planning the summit on October 8th at HCC, and we're organizing the speakers. We're coming up with a theme to be all-inclusive, and the theme that we've come up with is my backyard is your backyard, and it's all about forming a community. And this particular summit deals with the Community Indicator Project as one of the main focal points of it. And it really, I think, wants to hone in on people in their own communities and find out what, in their minds, makes a good, solid community, what they would like to see, and what they think Tampa needs more of. So we're working with speakers to organize that, to have a summit, and really from that summit, kind of work with people afterwards. We're going to have some volunteers and we're going to have some workshops afterwards. So you can actually start implementing some of the information and some of the ideas here in our own community.
And I know also Carmen is getting involved in this TV series, trained as a camera person down at Community Access.
I really should be on the other side of the camera.
I know, but we needed her on this side today. some of the things that we have done is started Earth Scouts, which is an inclusive scouting program for boys and girls. And so that's one thing. I've also appeared just at a couple of the city hearings for the Human Rights Ordinance, speaking out and thinking that, well, Guy, you got to listen to this. The conference of U.S. Conference of Mayors have endorsed this and adopted this. This ought to be important to your city. It doesn't always travel very well, but I do try. And I was just wondering what other ideas you can give us, since this is an inclusive document and we want to attract all folks to it. And we do have some lesbian women involved, but primarily it is pretty much a white movement here in the United States. Thank God it's international, so it's got more diversity internationally. But how can we support the gay lesbian movement as well as engage more gays and lesbians in our Earth Charter movement? Any ideas?
I think it's always important in when you're trying to engage a community, is to go into the community. So you really have to have a presence whenever there's a gay or lesbian activity. With Gay Pride Sunday coming up in June, it's a perfect opportunity for there to be a Earth Charter presence. Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. Every time there's an event that says gay and lesbian, there should be an Earth Charter booth or folks there saying, there's a reason that as a gay and a lesbian, you should be here. You should be a part of this. Here's another piece of the puzzle. Here's another building block for the bridge. Because it has, fundamentally, the most beautiful concept of inclusiveness of any document probably on the planet right now that's been written in the last 50 years, to have something as brilliant and simple and accessible as the Earth Charter. It appeals, when you can get people to read it, to just about everyone. So into the community, always into the community.
We have to talk to our neighbors in ways that take us out of our comfort zone. You know, Equality Florida is the organization that I'm with. I think it's a fantastic organization. I want everybody to be a member of it. I want everybody to be a volunteer. But there's no substitute for you having a conversation with your brother. You going next door and saying to your neighbor, you know, I just found out that this anti-gay marriage amendment is coming, and I realized that we've been neighbors and I've never talked to you about my life, and I want to talk to you because this really scares me. And that is a transformative moment for people. And those are the things that I think we have to do. And in some ways, I think the far right does it more because they create a sense of community. And they build community around a fear of others. And we need to build a community around an understanding that difference is not something to be frightened of.
Or we need to build a community around the acceptance and love of the others.
The inclusiveness.
Yeah, the positive. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what the Earth Charter does. Thanks so much for being here, and I know we're moving on to the food now that the cameras are being turned off. So
Jan, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Jan. It's a pleasure.
To the Earth Charter.
To the Earth Charter.
And to inclusiveness.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.